Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a breaking and dramatic story coming out of Eastern Europe. Belarus is once again on fire, both literally and politically. The streets of Minsk, the capital, have erupted with massive protests challenging the long-standing rule of President Alexander Lukashenko. What started as small gatherings has quickly evolved into one of the biggest uprisings the country has seen in years. The atmosphere is tense, the people are angry, and the government's response is as fierce as ever. So, what exactly sparked this new wave of protests, and what does it mean for the future of Belarus and its fragile relationship with Russia and the West? Let's unpack it all. Over the past few days, Minsk has transformed into a city of defiance. Crowds have poured into Independence Square, waving the old white flags that have become the symbol of opposition to Lukashenko's regime. Chanting for freedom and demanding Lukashenko's resignation, protesters are once again risking arrest, beatings, and even imprisonment to make their voices heard. Videos circulating online show police using stun grenades, water cannons, and tear gas against unarmed demonstrators. In some districts, reports suggest entire streets have turned into makeshift barricades, with protesters using whatever they can find to block advancing security forces. Lukashenko, who has ruled Belarus with an iron fist since 1994, is facing one of the most serious challenges to his power since the massive protests following the disputed 2020 election. Back then, his government survived through a brutal crackdown that led to thousands of arrests and forced many opposition leaders into exile. But this time, the situation feels different. Economic struggles, ongoing sanctions, and widespread dissatisfaction with corruption and repression have pushed even former supporters to turn against him. Many ordinary Belarusians are now openly saying they've had enough of the decades-long dictatorship. The trigger for these new protests appears to be a combination of rising inflation, government censorship, and controversial arrests of student activists and journalists. Just last week, a group of university students were detained for organizing an online campaign calling for free elections and fair trials for political prisoners. That move sparked outrage and mobilized thousands. Within days, labor unions, teachers, and even some former police officers joined the protests. What's remarkable this time is how organized the resistance seems. Protesters are coordinating via encrypted apps, avoiding previous mistakes that allowed authorities to track and arrest them easily. At the same time, international attention has once again turned to Belarus. The European Union and the United States have condemned the government's violent response and warned of new sanctions if the crackdown continues. Meanwhile, Russia, Lukashenko's closest ally, has issued statements of concern, but stopped short of criticizing Minsk, reflecting Moscow's own worries about instability on its western border. Still, behind the scenes, analysts say the Kremlin is uneasy. Belarus has become increasingly dependent on Russia since 2020, but if Lukashenko loses control, Putin's influence in the region could weaken dramatically. On the ground, however, the focus is on the people. Citizens in Minsk have been sharing images of burning tires, barricaded intersections, and protesters singing national songs late into the night. Some accounts claim that parts of the city have become no-go zones for government forces after large groups of demonstrators pushed back against police raids. Despite the government's attempts to shut down internet access, VPN networks and alternative messaging services have kept information flowing. The spirit of resistance is spreading fast, not only in Minsk, but also in cities like Hrodna, Brest, and Vitebsk, where smaller protests are now erupting. Lukashenko's government is responding with familiar tactics, blaming foreign interference and labeling protesters as Western-backed extremists, State media has been working overtime to portray the movement as a plot to destabilize the country, yet the more the government tries to control the narrative, the more people seem to rebel. Many protesters have begun wearing masks not just to hide their identities, but also as a symbol of defiance against state surveillance. In interviews posted online, Belarusians say they are no longer afraid, they've already lost too much, and now they feel they have nothing left to lose. The situation is especially dangerous because Belarus remains tightly linked to Russia's ongoing conflict with Ukraine. The country has allowed Russian troops to use its territory as a staging ground, which has angered many Belarusians who don't want to be part of Moscow's war. As the war drags on, sanctions have crippled Belarus's economy, driving prices up and pushing more citizens into poverty. This economic hardship is fueling the unrest. Some protesters have even shouted anti-Russian slogans, demanding that Belarus end its military cooperation with Moscow. That's something Lukashenko cannot tolerate without risking his alliance with Putin, a relationship that keeps his government afloat. Meanwhile, opposition figures living abroad are trying to seize the moment. Exiled leader Lana Tsikhanouskaya has issued a call for unity, urging citizens not to give up. She's calling on international organizations to step in, perhaps even to mediate talks between the regime and the opposition. So far, Lukashenko has refused any dialogue, insisting that he remains in full control. But insiders suggest that cracks are forming within his government and even among the security services. Reports are circulating that some officers have quietly refused orders to fire on crowds, a rare act of defiance in a country where loyalty is everything. What happens next could define Belarus for decades. If the protests continue to grow, Lukashenko may be forced into concessions, or his regime could collapse altogether. On the other hand, if he doubles down with another violent crackdown, the country risks slipping into total chaos. Either way, the current situation shows a clear message. The people of Belarus have reached their limit. They are demanding freedom, dignity, and the right to choose their own future, things that have been denied to them for far too long. As night falls over Minsk, the chants echo once again through the city streets, "Long live Belarus." It's a cry that captures both the pain and the hope of a nation caught between tyranny and transformation. The outcome is uncertain, but one thing is clear: Belarus is changing, and there's no going back to the silence of the past. The world is watching closely, and every act of courage, every protester standing tall, is shaping a new chapter in the country's history. The fire burning in the heart of Minsk today may just be the spark that reignites the dream of a free Belarus, and that's where things stand for now. The next few days will be critical, and we'll continue to follow every development as it unfolds. Stay tuned, stay informed, and don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth coverage of this fast-changing story.